Hello, my friends. Welcome to another episode of Deep True Crime. As you can see, we're a few days away from Halloween, so I thought I would bring a little Halloween theme into our mix today. Thank you for joining me in today's episode where we cover top true crimes that are going on today and yesterday. My whole purpose around this channel is to keep you updated, to keep you informed, to help you stay on top of things that, maybe you're not always on top of, like how much you should be aware of your surroundings. I'm Manny Rodriguez. Thank you for joining me today. We got a few different stories that we want to share with you, so don't go anywhere. I'll be back in 10 seconds. Welcome back, my friends. Let's go ahead and dive into it, shall we? Thank you for being a part of this. I want to share with you some top stories that are in the news. And the very first thing we have to continue covering until it's put to rest is the Brian Laundrie update. Like, what's going on over there, right? One second we find remains, next second it's the results are inconclusive. So it's a madhouse down there in the Northport, Florida area around the Brian Laundrie. So let's go ahead and share with you some of the things that have been going on. The first thing I want to bring to you, let me update that. So Florida police reveal a huge mistake in the search for Brian Laundrie. What a surprise is that, right? We thought all along you guys should have done better at handling this. And so Florida investigators said that they mistook Brian Laundrie's mom, for her son days after Brian Laundrie's fiancé, Gabby, was reported missing. So she was reported missing on September 11th. And the Florida investigators admit they mistook, her name is Roberta Laundrie, his mom. They mistook the mom for her son. How does that happen? Because they were both wearing a hat? One's bald, right? And maybe this is their cover up to, we have eyes on him. We know where he's at when the time comes. That's my guess, that they're just trying to protect themselves. Who knows? And so according to the Northport Police Department, a spokesperson, Josh Taylor, says they are built kind of similarly. Like, I don't know. I don't know how to reply to that particular comment. I don't know how to reply to that comment. And so they are built kind of similarly. One has hair, one does not. One's a male, one's a female. I don't know. I don't even know. So police said they saw Laundrie drive away from his home on September 13th in a Mustang. 2 days later, the Mustang came home. And police said they believe Laundrie's mother, Roberta Laundrie, drove the car home. Now, let's be real. That's a friggin' huge mistake. That's a huge mistake if you ask me. Again, if you were to ask me, that's a huge mistake. No doubt about that. Okay, so it's like, number one, how does that happen? Now, truth is, don't get me wrong, humans are humans. We're known to make mistakes, right? We're known to make mistakes, but this is a big mistake because it made police think Brian Laundrie had been at home for the days between September 13th and September 15th when, come to find out, I don't know. There's still some discrepancies. First, the parents said he left to the Carlton Reserve on September 14th. And then when they were confronted with some new evidence, they're like, oh, well, we got our days mixed up. He left on September 13th, the day before. And he was reported missing on September 17th. So that's some serious discrepancy. That's some serious discrepancies. And so we know that they left at the beginning of July, heading to a cross-country trip, him and Gabby Petito, and only Brian Laundrie comes back in her vehicle on September 1st. And so Petito was finally reported missing on September 11th. And so apparently police started surveillance on Laundrie. Like, I watch a lot of crime shows, and I know sometimes they make mistakes. You know, they're human too. They're professionals, but they're human, right? That's going to happen. And so now we are believing that Brian Laundrie's dead. I kind of think he's dead. I think he's dead. But there's a lot of discrepancies around that as well. And so Brian Laundrie was reported missing on September 17th, and he was later confirmed dead a little over 4 weeks later on October 20th. And so they found his remains in Myakkahatchee Creek Environmental Park, which is part of Carlton Reserve in Florida, which is also where they were said to have been. Like, that's where the parents said he went. And so we don't know other than that, do we? Like, and truth is, we may never get the whole truth. We may never get the whole truth. Gabby Petito's father, he speaks out about this Laundrie notebook. He talks about this Laundrie notebook. As we know, Brian Laundrie, his remains have been found next to his backpack, which, by the way, the dad found and the cops didn't. I'm telling you, there's some weird stuff around this. Not only with a backpack, but they also found a notebook with him, with the remains. Let's make that clear. With the remains. And so Gabby Petito's father, he speaks up. He speaks up. Joe Petito speaks up. He says he isn't obsessing over Brian Laundrie's recently recovered notebook and that he doesn't expect its contents to bring him any form of closure. And so, and the thing about this is when Brian Laundrie was said to have been deceased, this was also about the time that authorities said they had their eyes on him and then mistook him for his mom. He might have already been dead at this time. We don't really know. We don't really know. And so according to this article, and this article is from radio.com, according to this article as of yesterday, Brian Laundrie was likely deceased within days of Petito's reported disappearance. And so Brian Laundrie likely died within 2 days of Gabby Petito's reported disappearance on September 11th, authorities told People magazine. And so, well, that soon? I mean, this long, big manhunt that lasted about a month, and he was apparently in the Carlton Reserve this whole time. I say it that way because I've got my doubts. I truly do believe it is his remains, but if I'm wrong, I'm gonna be like, oh my gosh, I was wrong. But it makes sense with the discrepancies around it. Okay, won't be the first time I've been wrong. Sometimes I've, who knows? I'm human too. But Joshua Taylor, the spokesperson for the Northport Police, he told People magazine that Laundrie had likely already perished when the officers mistook Laundrie for his mother on September 13th, when she was spotted driving in her son's gray Ford Mustang. Now that's another thing. At first we were always told it was her Mustang. So I don't know. It makes sense that it would be his because it's more of a, a younger person. I don't even know if I would say a younger person's vehicle, but it's more of a power car, something that goes really, really fast. So I can definitely see that being more his than hers. But at first, apparently we were hearing that it was her vehicle. And so Taylor made the point to stress that the mix-up didn't meaningfully impact the investigation into Petito's disappearance. Okay, that makes sense. Other than confusion, it likely changed nothing. There is a very good possibility that Brian was already deceased. He still needed to be found. We just wanted people to better understand why we thought we knew Brian was in the home. See? I didn't even read that part. They're covering their butts on why they said we have eyes on him. You mistook him for his mom. I'm not buying that. I'm just not buying that. Seriously, I'm not buying it. And so now we wait to find out more. But back to Gabby's dad, who says Brian's notebook won't bring him closure. And he said the notebook that was recovered near Brian Laundrie last week won't bring closure for him if authorities are able to retrieve some of its contents. Well, it might have been wet, or was it not wet? Did he ever? I don't know. There's so much surrounding this thing. My goal is to dig deep and get you the answers that I can come up with. And so the notebook was discovered next to the skeletal remains that were confirmed to be Brian's. Now, they confirmed this to be Brian through dental records. Okay? But Joe, he shares that he's not concerned with what's in the notebook, as nothing Brian may have written will bring back his 22-year-old daughter. Well, that's the truth. And so, he shares here, which is a lot of us. Joe said any possible revelations won't help him recover from the loss of a child, and that the only reason he'd be interested in the notebook's contents is for his own selfish gratification, which is a lot of us. A lot of us want to know what's in that notebook for our own selfish gratification, really. Like, what's in it? Like, almost kind of nosy about it. Because, who knows? To me, I feel like this is already tainted a little because the parents are the one that found some of this. It could very well be because apparently they went and they were going to search in places that he frequented the day after the park was reopened. And according to the police, the authorities, they said this place had previously been covered by water. So that's why they didn't really get much out of it. And, so Josh Taylor, Northport spokesperson, he says that some of the contents of the notebook may be salvageable, but he's leaving that up to the FBI, which is also the lead agency on the case. And so this case is not dead. This case is not dead until we get more information. This case is not dead at all, I don't think. And so, there are also discrepancies on this DNA analysis being inconclusive. Okay, and I want to share some of that with you as well. So the DNA analysis that is not yet performed, but police are trying to dispel rumors because that when they went to do it, it was inconclusive. And so dental records, though, should be able to identify him. But maybe they're concerned about some, again, my same concern, the fact that the parents found him or found the actual backpack where the remains were not far from the backpack. Like, you found that and then, like, it wasn't within view? It wasn't within view of this backpack? Like, how did they miss that part? So that's why I say there's a little discrepancies around this stuff. Literally. And so the Northport Police Department, they announced this week, a couple days ago, that a DNA analysis on Brian Laundrie's body has yet to be performed and dispelled rumors that the DNA did not match his remains. So, according to the Northport Police Department, they received numerous inquiries about a false report of DNA not matching Brian Laundrie. And so the police department decided to post a statement from the local medical examiner's office. That way they can dispel any potential rumors that the remains found did not match Laundrie. And so the statement from the medical examiner's office said the identity of the remains found at the Carlton Reserve on October 20th was confirmed by comparison to known dental records of Brian Laundrie. No DNA analysis has yet been performed on the remains. And the statement continues, samples will be submitted for DNA testing once the examination of the remains by the medical examiner's office is complete. And so that's as much as we'll know right now, but dental records should definitely confirm that. Dental records, no doubt, should be able to confirm that that is him. I would think, right? I mean, we've always been told, I've watched so many true crime stories and shows, and dental records have always been one of the ways to give a positive description, a positive confirmation. And so, according to them, they're trying to say there's no doubt that that was him. But according to Stephen Bertolino, the Laundrie attorney, he says that an autopsy of Brian remains came back inconclusive and were being sent to an anthropologist for further evaluation. And he says no manner or cause of death was determined. I would imagine we'll find out soon, or maybe not soon. I mean, we should have had confirmation about Gabby Petito early on about the autopsy, but that took more than 2 weeks, didn't it? And so now we know Laundrie's family didn't hold a funeral. They cremated the remains? I don't know. This is where a lot of this gets a little weird, right? And so that's all we know at this time when it comes to Brian Laundrie and an update around him. And so I want to say that this is big stuff. And I hope a lot of people are being alert as to what goes on out there and protecting your loved ones, protecting yourself, and know when you're in a bad relationship when it's time to really walk away for good. And as you know, I shared an incident last week, or actually a few days ago on my stream, where a young lady was afraid to break up with her boyfriend because she didn't know how, she was afraid of him. Turns out she was right to be afraid of him, because it ends up being sometimes I'm not too sure what words I can use on these streams, but he killed her and then killed himself. And so that's what we know. That's why you got to be careful. You know, sometimes you get into stuff and you don't even know how to get out of it. I've been there as well. And so that's the Brian Laundrie update as we know it right now. Next up that I want to talk about, boss murdered employee. That's right. Boss murdered employee. And not only that, but he buried him under a septic tank. Wow. And the way that he was caught, he was tripped up by his own lies. And this is according to authorities. And so, alleged paper-thin lies couldn't stand between an Oklahoma man and a murder case. Daniel Joseph Triplett has been arrested for murdering an employee and burying the man under a client's septic tank. Wow, is that not a doozy new one there? Holy macarolas. So now, because he couldn't keep his lies straight, he caught himself in his own lies. And, you know, truth is, when you lie, you better remember your lies. You better remember your lies and don't make them sound rehearsed. I've watched a lot of true crime stories, a lot of interrogation stuff. For me, I try to understand why things happen the way they do. See, like shows like Unsolved Mysteries, I've never been a fan of that because there's no ending, right? It's unsolved. I love shows and movies with endings that help solve the mystery. And so here he is lying and getting caught in his own lies. And that's the whole thing. Is like, you better remember your lies, especially if they have to do with something like so heinous like this crime. And so, you know, they started with questions to Brent Mack, rest in peace, Brent Mack. And they started, you know, questions, you know, the investigators all started with questions from the concerned daughter of Brent Mack. And so she's asking questions. She's wanting some answers, right? She reached out to the boss of Brent Mack, you know, Triplett, that's his name, Daniel Joseph Triplett, who allegedly engaged in a series of lies that were undermined by documents and surveillance footage. And so they had camera. I have been binge watching See No Evil. You guys watch that show? Let me know in the comments if you watch that show. And it's the camera doing most of the work. I mean, you can't run. That's the best eyewitness there is. When it comes to seeing what is going on, the camera does not lie. The camera does not lie. And so you think about the surveillance footage around here from what Daniel is telling the daughter of Brent Mack. I mean, of course they're going to look into it. And so in the daughter's version of events, Daniel told her on Facebook Messenger that he fired Brent Mack on September 20th, dropped him off in front of a laundromat, and gave him $1,000 as severance. But he deleted those messages. And so if she screenshots it, she's got it, right? But Facebook now allows you to delete those messages as well. And so looks like he tried to delete them to cover some of his lies. Okay? And so according to the investigators, the daughter provided them screenshots. Great job. Of these messages as soon as she got them. And she also had access to her dad's login information. And investigators said that the last call his phone made was to his Texas-based girlfriend. He's got a girlfriend that lives in Texas. And so the girlfriend told investigators that she met Mac online and spoke to him every day for about 4 months. And that's where the last phone call was. And that she last spoke to him on September 20th. September 20th. And that was when he told her he was being picked up to go to work. And later, when he said he was on a job site and did not have good service. Okay, so they were talking. And later on that day, he texted her and he's like, okay, babe, I'll call you later. And so it was the final time that he contacted her. And so, of course, investigators, they said they reached Triplet. They reached Triplet over the phone. And he stated that he wanted to cut ties with Brent. Triplet is the boss. He stated, according to investigators, he stated that he wanted to cut ties with Brent because of his violent demeanor. And he stated he gave Brent $1,000 as severance pay. And he claimed, Triplet, he claimed that Brent exited the truck and told him he was going to Texas to get married. And so the investigator, Lieutenant Brunning, he asked if Brent was upset about being fired, and Dan told him he wasn't upset. That's interesting on its own. And so when asked where he worked on that September 20th, Triplet gave an address, and he gave the address to authorities as to where he was working that day. And it was for a barn home being built with a fresh septic tank and lateral lines. But the property owner said the septic tank and lateral lines installation was back on the 7th, not the 20th. Interesting, right? The property owner even stated he had a text message from Dan, the boss, on September 20th, stating that the job had been completed on September 8th. Taking 2 days to complete. On the 7th and 8th, 2 days. And so there he was. He's catching himself in his own lies. He's saying this. He's telling the daughter this. He's trying to catch him. He's trying to remember everything he has to say, right? And so Triplet, he goes to the police department as instructed to speak about Brent Mack. And according to the affidavit, he admitted to being in an area where someone dumped a bag full of Mack's work clothes. But he was there to check on the lights of a personal truck. So he was just there and someone found the clothes. He continued to insist that he and Mack last worked at that address. But again, he starts changing his story on where he left Mack. This is where you start getting tripped up on your own stuff, because of course they're going to follow everything until they have this thing completed. They follow every nook and cranny. They go through hours and hours of video to either catch you in a lie, to find out what's happened, and the whole 9 yards. So that's interesting of itself. Okay? Because when he says he left him in front of the laundromat, that didn't hold up, so he knew he better change his story. And so what do the investigators do? They showed Dan surveillance footage, video footage, showing him driving by the Holiday Laundry and not stopping. Because he said he stopped and dropped him off there. And so then, of course, when he's confronted with the inconsistencies in the story, he starts becoming a little more red-faced, started to get a little angry because they're not believing his story. And so Dan was asked about other jobs and locations, and Dan stated he couldn't remember because he's about to get caught up in more lies, I bet. So, you know, this is still an ongoing investigation, but he's definitely being charged. He's definitely being charged. So they executed a search warrant at Triplett's home on October 14th. October 14th. Among other evidence, they discovered a statement book in his truck showing that he was working on East County Road 69 on September 20th. Okay? And so that, again, they got to follow everything. They got to follow everything. And the client at that home was getting a septic tank installed. So investigators, they said surveillance footage showed two people. One was Brent Mack, the other was Dan Triplett, the boss. And they both showed up in Triplett's vehicle. But only one person was seen leaving. Wow. So they both got there in Dan's truck, but only one person left. And footage showed Brent Mack entering the septic tank hole and also taking a lunch break in the truck. But video did not show either man fighting each other. But investigators dug up that septic tank, and lo and behold, what did they find? What do you think they found? They found Mac's dead body under it. Rest in peace. Rest in peace, Mr. Mack. And so on October 22nd, an agent was notified that the medical examiner office had located what's believed to be a projectile in the chest cavity with an entry wound in the upper left back, which looks to be like maybe he was shot. And so Triplett, he's in the Logan County Jail without bond, and he faces a count of murder in the first degree and desecration of a human corpse. And so as of this time, it definitely looks like he is the bad guy in this incident. Definitely looks like he messed up. Definitely looks like he messed up. So there you have it. Sad story. Boss murdered employee, buried him under the septic tank. And so the next story I want to share with you, ex-policewoman kills 5 people. I know. And why do you suppose they did that? Why do you suppose she did that? Right? Why do you suppose she did that? Well, let's go ahead and talk about that, why don't we? So, ex-cop Rosemary Andilovu, I'm not going to pronounce that again because I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it, and I don't like to mispronounce names out of respect, but some of these names can be hard to pronounce. And so, she's accused of putting a hit out on a former boss, investigating officer while she was in prison. And so she is a convicted murderer. She was already in prison for a different crime. And while she was in prison, she started having an ex-cop investigated. So South African ex-policewoman killed relatives and boyfriend for insurance. Wow. And so this girl, she's an angry lady. She is truly an angry lady. And honestly, from what it sounds to me, she doesn't have much remorse on this matter. And so she has been found guilty of killing 5 relatives and her boyfriend at the end of a trial that has gripped the country. And so I guess she actually kills 6. I made a mistake there. It was 5 family relatives and her boyfriend. And so the 6 murders was between 2012 and 2018. It was almost like an average of 1 a year. And so most of this was with the help of a hitman. Wow. And her whole goal here was to get the money from the life insurance policy on the family members. And the boyfriend one, I believe it was because he knew. And so next month she'll be sentenced. I don't know what kind of sentence she's looking at, but she was found guilty of the attempted murder of her mother, Maria, as well as insurance fraud, Wow, see how greed does this to people. And that's why investigators always have to look at every which way, because money does motivate people to do bad things. And something like this is the worst. This is the worst of the worst, if you ask me. I don't think it gets worse than killing somebody at all. I don't think there's anything worse. There's a lot of bad, but taking someone's life, to me, you truly have a lot of evil in you. And to do it 6 times, to be responsible for 6 deaths, unbelievable. It's heartbreaking in so many ways. And that's why I wanted to share this story, because again, when something happens, you want to explore all possibilities, right? You want to explore all possibilities when something happens. And in the case of why I do this, the number one reason, help you be aware of what goes on so you can be aware of what to be careful for. Because to me, there's always red flags. But granted, sometimes you got to ignore the red flags or sometimes you feel like you got to ignore the red flags when you love somebody, right? That happens a lot. And so over the course of the 3-month trial, the prosecution revealed how she had systematically arranged life and funeral insurance for her relatives and then had them killed. Oh my gosh. And the first person to be murdered was her cousin. Rest in peace, cousin. And this was in March of 2012. So this was the very first one. Then her sister, boyfriend, niece, and 2 nephews were all killed in that order for life insurance. So basically, she was putting life insurance on each of them and then killing them. I wonder if they knew there was life insurance on them. And her last victim, Brilliant Mashigo, rest in peace, died in January 2018. So from March of 2012, rest in peace Mandala Homu, rest in peace sister, rest in peace boyfriend, rest in peace niece, rest in peace 2 nephews. They were all killed because of this heinous, selfish act. And so in most of these cases, she hired a hitman to carry out the murders. But in 2013, she poisoned and strangled her sister, Audrey Somisa Ndi Lovu. She did that one herself, not the hitman. Rest in peace, Audrey. The series of murder The series of murders ended after she approached someone to kill another sister and the sister's 5 children in March of 2018. Unbelievable and as sick as can get. Then the man she hired, he did the right thing. He informed the police, who then arranged a sting operation to record her talking about the plans. And she was heard speaking about how she wanted the 6 to be burnt alive at home, saying that she needed the money. Wow. Now, of course, during the trial, she's saying she's innocent. She's literally saying she's innocent. But the prosecution produced evidence to show how she had been with most of her victims before their deaths and how she had benefited afterwards. Wow. And so, according to a state advocate, the accused was either the last person to see them alive or the first to notice that they were missing. She nominated herself as the beneficiary so as to cash in on life and funeral covers. I mean, does it get uglier than that? Yeah, I mean, that's pretty ugly. I don't know that it really gets uglier than that. I mean, what else did she get away with before that? Her time as a policewoman. You know? What did she get away with? So that's that story. Ex-Policewoman Kills 6. The next story and the final story that I want to share is another heartbreaker. Literally. This is one of the most... Now, if you follow my channel, I don't really talk much about kids being killed because that to me is the worst. I'm going to do my best to talk about this and not let my emotions take over, because this is a really, really sad story. And it's a terrible, terrible story. And I hope that the kids can recover from this. Literally, I hope that the kids can recover from this heinous act. So 3 kids lived with the remains of their brother, who was violently killed by the mother's boyfriend. And they lived in this home without the mom and her boyfriend, because they lived elsewhere. I know. The 15-year-old, who was the oldest, was taking care of the 2 youngest. The 15-year-old. And the neighbor had been feeding the 15-year-old, giving him packaged food, not knowing that there were 2 other siblings in the home. I told you, this is a really ugly story. So bear with me here as I share with you. So, child whose skeletal remains were found in Houston apartment killed by homicidal violence. This is according to the medical examiner. The cause of death of the child, whose body was found abandoned in an apartment in Houston, has been ruled homicidal violence with multiple blunt force injuries. And the child's mother and her boyfriend have been charged after authorities found 3 young siblings abandoned in the home along with the body of their brother. I mean, can you imagine those poor kids? Can you imagine? This is why it's hard for me to talk about kids. But my point in this story is the neighbor, you know, should she have reported this to child service? When I was a kid, I didn't deal with this type. This was something beyond. But when I was a kid, we were taking from my mom because she was lost in drugs. She was, as she put it, she was on a mission when it came to these drugs. That's how she phrased it to me. She couldn't handle it. And multiple people called what was at that time BCW, I'll never forget that, Bureau of Child Welfare in New York. And we were taken because people can see we were not well taken care of. And so we were put into the foster care system. And people saw, people called. And in this particular case, that wasn't going to prevent the child from being killed because he had already been killed. He had already been hurt by his mother and boyfriend. And the story is a terrible story. And so Brian Coulter, 31, was charged with murder in the death of an 8-year-old child who died in 2020. 2020. Which means these 3 kids lived in this apartment with a child dead in that apartment. This is why this is hard to even talk about. I want you to know, be alert on what's going on there. It's easy to close your eyes and think it's going to walk away, but it doesn't. It doesn't. Because these 3 kids are scarred for the rest of their life. For the rest of their life. And so you have to wonder, could it have been prevented from the beginning? Obviously not, because this Brian's a freaking creep. It should have been prevented by a mother who's supposed to protect her children. I thought mama bears protect their children. Apparently you don't, do you, Gloria? That's her name, Gloria. And so he's charged now. Brian Coulter is charged with this heinous crime. Let's show you a picture of these terrible, terrible people. This is them on the left and the right. And oh my God, like the anger I can feel just looking at them right now. How could you do that? And so Gloria let her boyfriend do this. Gloria Williams, that's her name, he allowed the boyfriend to do this. And the younger children, of course, they were not taken care of. They were malnourished. They were not taken care of. They were not going to school. And so, I mean, that's as bad as it can be, if you ask me. Like, that's why you gotta be aware of what's going on out there and not just sweep it under the rug. You don't want to just sweep it under the rug. So a Texas mother and her boyfriend have been arrested after the law enforcement discovered 3 abandoned children who had been living in the apartment with the remains of their deceased brother for about a year. So Gloria Williams has been described as the mother of the murdered child, and she has been charged with injury to a child by omission, because she didn't say anything, and tampering with evidence. Evidence in this case refers to a human corpse. And 31-year-old Brian Coulter, why do people think they'll get away with this? I don't understand that. I do not understand. You really believe you were going to get away with this, Brian? Come on. The victim was 8 years old. The victim was 8 years old when he died. And they concealed his remains with a blanket. They just put a blanket over him. They just put a blanket over him. And what's interesting is when they were arrested, they were at a public library reading news news articles about themselves and the situation. And they were living in an apartment 15 minutes away from where the children were left to fend for themselves. And the 15-year-old, 15, had to take care of his two younger siblings for almost a year. And so additional charges are expected to be filed. May the 8-year-old little one rest in peace. And my hope is that these children receive the love, the healing, the support, the guidance that they will need for the rest of their lives. I pray that something good comes out of this. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. And this is why I say, people, please don't ignore what's going on around you. Don't ignore what's going on around you. And so you had the three boys. The oldest was 15, 10, and 7. And so, the neighbor, she had, the neighbor of the abandoned children in Houston, she told ABC 13 that she had complained for months about a horrible smell coming from their apartment. And of course, she doesn't want to remain, she'd rather remain unidentified. But she told the outlet that the odor was sometimes so bad that she would turn off her air conditioner so that the smell wouldn't come in. And she complained, but no one did anything. And of course, now the children are in the child protective custody. And rest in peace, little one, and may God be with those other children. This is the type of stuff. This is why I do this. It's hard. I'm not going to lie. It's very hard. But my purpose is to help people stay alert, stay awake, be aware what's going on around you. Be aware, don't ignore. I'm Manny Rodriguez. Thank you for joining me today in this episode of Deep True Crime, where we explore those crimes and cases that are going on out there to help you be aware of your surroundings. Just like the neighbor who was feeding the child or smelling the odor, and do more next time. Of course, I'm not blaming them for anything, but hopefully, hopefully they learn from this that they probably could have done a little more. I'm Manny Rodriguez, and as humans, I understand we're not perfect. No one's perfect. No one's perfect. We were created as imperfect human beings. And so, be alert, be caring, care about others around you. That's why I do this show. I'm Manny Rodriguez. Thank you for joining me today. I look forward to serving you again. Peace.